Hello everyone. Recently I've been getting into Linux a lot, and I'm starting to see that there are real uh, productive gains here, real productivity gains to be made with Linux. And I just thought I'd bring this to my friends out there who might want to try this out and just need somebody to show them the cool parts. Um, so I'll just kind of go through my, I guess, my setup, you could say. Um, so I've kind of put all these different parts together to have a decent environment where I can do some work and I can code and etc. So right now I'm in just a terminal here. You'll see that I have 9 tags up top. You'll see that I have 9 tags up top, or that side, I guess. And I can cycle through them, and each one, has a function in my sort of head canon here. Okay, so I use the web icon for Firefox, and here I put whatever code I'm working on. Here I've got a program called Emacs, has a really fun mode called org, stands for organization, and you can see I'm just navigating through a to-do list for this computer. So this is all the stuff that I want to set up, and it just stays here and it's open, and I can bring it over or not, and or I can move on. This is where I have my file manager. Browse your files, File Explorer, etc. This with the little chemistry icon there. This is where I just put whatever project I'm working on. So for example, you'll see there's actually a BART icon up there, which I imported from an SVG file into FontForge, and I created my own custom font. It's stuff like this that just makes it so much more fun to be on Linux. But, really it's not that important, so I'll just move on. Here, I've got kind of a server icon. I usually keep stuff that's running in the background here. So, you can see my recording software. I've got my keyboard, lighting program there. And here I've got a little program called Spotify TUI, so Terminal User Interface. So I can run Spotify in my terminal. And I don't have to run some big program, and this takes up much less resources. Here I just put whatever personal stuff I'm working on. But I left it empty because I want to show you that this is just an image. I can right click and there's some sort of menu, but I can't put files here. Even if I even if I open a terminal and I make a directory called desktop. I guess I already had one. And it's empty, so let's make a couple text files. You'll see, they don't pop up here. If I had done that on Windows or Mac OS, they would be here. So the important thing, essentially what I'm building to, is that I only have something to manage my different windows. I'm not really using anything that wraps everything. I don't really have like one menu for logging in and logging out. I have these little menus that I configured, and they run commands. So I've got my volume here, and I've got one for, I've got my famous power menu there. But if you're on Windows or Mac, that's, it's Mac that gives you that. It's Windows, so there's like a big wrapper around it, and it's just much nicer and much simpler to only worry about the windows. And it does take time to configure everything yourself, but you don't have to. Some people have done this before, and it's online, and etc. I'll move on. So this is a program called Bottom. Usually people use something called HTOP, but I uninstalled in favor of Bottom just because it looks nicer. And this is like my file manager, right? Or my I forget what it's called. No, not file managers. Sorry. My whatever on on Windows and Mac, you have some sort of menu that can. So here it's just like in Windows when you'd press like Control Shift Escape, you'd have a little program telling you, okay, here's how much resources they're using, and do you want to kill any of them? So that's the tour of the 9 different spaces. So it's fairly simple, right? I've got one spot for browsing the web, one spot for coding, one spot for, my journal or my agenda or whatever, my to-dos, one spot for the files, and keeping it like this keeps it very clean. But that's mostly thanks to the window manager. So what this thing does is whenever I open a program, it just decides where it's going to go. And it chooses where the window is going to go based on the little icon above my head, the kind of square with like 6, so one rectangle, 6 smaller ones. That's like the layout right now. So if I open a couple applications here, and you'll see that the looks like I've got some errors there, but whatever. You'll see that the windows are placed automatically, and I can change this layout and they'll follow along. So it's kind of hard to tell with the transparent windows, but you can see I've got sort of equal spaced in the layout. So once I add a new window, it doesn't go anywhere. It equalizes everything. And it's very nice not to have to do this with your mouse. Going from something like this to a completely different layout like this. Whoops. See, you can sort of like magnify one at a time. Doing that with your mouse takes ages. Like you have to resize everything and everything has to snap well, and you don't have time to do that on your laptop or even on your computer for that matter. Most people just use 1 or 2 different layouts and then they want full screen. So, oh well, it doesn't look full screen because that one is transparent, but something like this. Really, you just need full screen, windows side by side, and something to hide the windows, and that's it. What I'm getting at is that I'm just cutting out all of the garbage out of Windows. Nowadays, you open Windows and there's OneDrive screaming at you. File Explorer has 10 different red X's with 10 different errors because it can't sync your files to OneDrive and because you don't have enough storage. Anyway, all of that stuff doesn't have to be there. You doing your work doesn't have to listen to some ad from Microsoft's cloud service, Anyway. So I'm just using keyboard shortcuts, and I use J for going down and K for going up. And it's a lot of shortcuts, but really it's intuitive. I use super for anything to do with Windows. So super means Windows key, the one between Control and Alt. So no matter which layout they're in, I can cycle through them. And at first I was like, well, wouldn't it be nice to cycle directionally, to press like my right going button and then go to the right side window. But as it turns out, it's easier to use a bunch of different layouts when you can just cycle through them in a circle. And then, so if you're starting to piece it together, I use J for down arrow, K for up arrow, and then for moving between my tags, I'm using H and L. And that's all in combination of pressing super. So it's very logical. I'm using the Vim key bindings for moving my cursor. And when I add super to that, it just moves the windows around or moves my focus. A lot of people don't realize that the limitations on Linux aren't that bad. There's some pretty cool stuff you can do here, right? I have a Corsair keyboard. I found a piece of software for Linux that was in the package manager's repository. I'll get to that. It works perfectly fine, and I don't need the Corsair branded Windows software to use my keyboard, and everything is fine. I have OBS running right now. I don't think I have it installed, but GIMP is pretty much Photoshop. There's nothing really that you need. Here is a font software. You can see up there I've got kind of a Bart icon. This is what I use to insert it from from an SVG file, so from a picture. And it's just really nice to do this stuff without having to move your hands from the keyboard. So getting into more things. Here is NeoVim. So it's just a terminal editor. So you do nvim, name of a file, it opens it, and then you can sort of change things. So I'm just moving around here, not being very efficient, but it takes some time to get used to Vim. But once you get used to the motions, to use HJKL for left, down, up, right, respectively, that's a bit challenging. But once you do, you'll see it's much nicer to just, there we go, relative number. It's much nicer to just move around with your fingers on the home row because you're going to be typing soon if you're editing a file. Let's say there were 3 lines from 4 to 6 that I wanted to cut. I'd go down here and then press 3 and then DD. So I cut out 3 lines. I deleted 3 lines. Doing that with the mouse would require some accuracy. I would have to, put my index at the right spot and drag it and everything. And it's just too much effort. You don't need that. You can just think about what you want to do, and there's a button to do it. And it has undo, redo, whatever you want. So here I've got like a little, I guess you could say a little website. It really is just an HTML page. And I'm using something in this terminal called tmux. Tmux allows me to sort of split the terminal into these different panes. So I have a leader key, which I do by Control A, and then I can press O and rotate around, or I can move them around. It's very much like my window manager, except it's in my terminal. So if ever I connect, somewhere else, I can use this and still have some notion of Windows. So if I focus down here, what I've got here is a program called mprox. So essentially it allows you to run stuff in the background. Here I've got just like a little Python HTTP server. So if I open Firefox now, and it seems like it might be floating here. There we go. You can see that if I go to the port here, I actually get a list of my files. So that's very cool, right? It's all in my terminal, and everything that I'm doing here, I haven't touched my mouse. I'll probably do another video with a keyboard cam, just so nobody suspects me. But yeah, what else? I think Emacs is a fabulous tool. There will certainly be a video about that. You can manage to-dos, and really the nicest thing is something they call captures. So if I'm not wrong, it's Control C, Control X, and Control C. Nope, that is column mode. But you see, like on these more complex pieces of software, they give you some sort of hint. So now I type Control A, and these are all the possible combinations. But there's no use in memorizing them because they show it to me, and it's not stuff you use like over and over again. Actually, capture is a pretty important one though, which I remembered is that. Okay, so it's asking me down there, do I want to make like a personal to-do? Yes. Okay, to-do, buy some eggs. And then finish. So CC means control and C at the same time, control and C. So once I'm finished, I'll control C. And it says it wrote to a file, but nothing changed, right? So if I open my sort of file searching here, and I open my to-do file, you can see that it put buy some eggs in this file for me. So if I'm writing and, I get a thought and I'm like, oh, I really have to do something later, I can just put it in a to-do and it's automatically gone. And that's very good for avoiding distractions. So, I used this already. I want to configure my computer. It's almost done, but I'll give it some time. So here is, as I said, a file manager. It works just like anything. If I go into my configurations and I come down to something like Doom here, I can open files by pressing enter, or O, and we'll say okay, we'll open it with NeoVim, and we'll do it on the command line. So look at that. So this is what Emacs uses. This is called eLisp. So it's a Lisp language, and as you can see, it's got lots of parentheses and weird looking comment symbols. But so this allows me to do pretty much everything that I would do with Windows File Explorer, except that it runs in a terminal. So it runs on fairly limited resources. It's still got the ability to do a lot, but it doesn't have to worry about any rendering. Like the rendering that's going on here is very, very minimal. And you'll see that I'm recording right now. I have here, I'll run a program. All right, so if I do a NeoFetch, I will get, and here I'm actually using the mouse. So it's not that you can't use it. I just have to press super and then I can drag or I can resize. It's not like the mouse is completely useless. It's just you want to avoid it as much as you can because it slows you down. So you can see I've got here so my CPU is a Ryzen 5 5600X, and okay, you can't see it. There we go. An RTX 3070, and I have 16 gigs of RAM. So this is like a good build. But if I go into here, into bottom, you can see that my current usage of RAM is 23%. My CPU usage is at 19%. I would not be able, with this computer, to record and run multiple terminals with a web browser and all these different things. Try to open it in Firefox here. Let's just close that. I wouldn't be able to run all these applications if they weren't very streamlined. And this is where the Unix philosophy comes in, of having one tool for each task. And I don't have these huge programs that take up a ton of resources, and you try to keep it small, and then you're able to really make use of your computer. If you just look at my screen, right, just the amount of space that I gain by not having anything at the top here, right? How close I can put windows and how many I can put really affects how you work. And the last thing is I want to talk about downloading software. If you're on Windows or on a Mac and you want some program, usually you open up Firefox and you go to some website, and the website tells you click on this green button and everything's going to be fine. Now, even ignoring all of the security risks of randomly downloading software from websites, just think about how this plays out for the computer, right? You're running all these different launchers and putting all these different programs wherever on your computer. The program just decides, okay, I'm going to go put myself in this spot, and you might never find me again. And of course, package managers, as they're called, for Mac OS and Windows exist. However, they're not really as prevalent, and they don't offer the same amount of software. However, I'm using a very popular Linux distribution, and it comes with a package manager called Pacman. So if I write this command, I can go look at essentially a list of verified open source programs that I know people keep track of, and that I know were approved by a team of admins. So I've got somebody watching my back, and if I want to install anything, right, like Chromium, for example, which is I can't talk and type at the same time. There we go. Chromium is sort of a stripped down version of Chrome. So it looks like that did not work.